So I wanted to start with what your experience is. Oops. Right, hang on a minute. I've got to move some stuff around. So, Marianne, do you experience this very often?
As far as a student really having trouble matching pitch, or just in general?
Yeah, no. Students either having trouble matching pitch or going out of tune.
I get the occasional student that can't match pitch, and it is kind of an exercise in frustration.
Right.
The other, as far as students going out of tune, yes, and I can usually pin it on either the vowel or vibrato not starting fast enough. But occasionally they'll just be, it's probably most of the students that are female, and it's right around that time of the month.
Right.
That,
okay.
that
yeah.
They'll struggle then.
Yeah, because obviously there's that time too.
Yes.
Yeah, there are the odd occasion when you'll get a new student who has never really done much in the way of singing, and matching pitch is a difficult thing for them because they just don't know it. So I'm going to go into all of that and the different terms. So can you see my presentation all right? There's nothing obstructing it, because right now I can't. Oh, hang on a minute. Let me move this over there. Right. Yeah. So we're going to cover the definition of tone deafness. Great, Colina, you can see. That's great. We're going to look at, is it likely that a student that comes in that has trouble pitching is actually tone deaf? Because a lot of people talk about being tone deaf. Is there a better way of explaining this issue? Some of the reasons that people can't pitch in the first place, and then why a singer might go flat or sharp. And then we're going to look into a bunch of different practical exercises that I've put together to help improve not only the ear but also the accuracy in pitch production. And then there's a few pitch training tools that I recommend periodically, or that I've been recommended by other people. So the definition in medical terms is tone deafness has got its own medical term, which is congenital amusia. So congenital being you're born with it, and amusia. So if you have dis anything, it's difficulty, and a anything, it's you don't have it. So aphasic means you have no speech. Dysphasia means you have difficulty with it. So amusia means sort of obviously no musicality. It's a lifelong disorder in pitch processing and in musical perception that affects somewhere around 4% of the population. Now, that's still very open to interpretation. There's no exact numbers, but this guy, Peretz, is one of those, or these people are sort of highly regarded in this area. So in spite of having that normal hearing and speech recognition, as well as no prior brain lesions or cognitive defects, or people, some sort of brain injury or something like that, the individuals who have this congenital amusia have a difficulty in recognising melodies and detecting pitch changes. So you play a melody, and then you play the melody and change the pitch somewhere along the line, and they won't pick it up. So their musical deafness is thought to reflect an underlying impairment in the pitch perception and memory. So this is in the brain. And there are some underlying neural causes of congenital amusia, which is still being debated. So it's like a lot of things, and, it's not an area that's been deeply studied. There are certain people who are kind of well known for doing this work, but it's not looked at in the way that, say, I don't know, you look at muscle movement and stretching in sports. So we're a bit limited there. So musicbrain.com, they have and I highly recommend you go and try it. They have a tone deaf test that you can do, and they basically play pitches, and the more further along you get along the test, the more the closer the pitches are. So in the beginning, you'll hear very definitely there's a totally different pitch, you know, it's lower or higher than the previous one. And then gradually they'll just decrease the frequency until it's actually really difficult to discern. And so they've done over 33,000, people have done this test. And this is the data that they've got so far. So out of these people, 7% were what they consider tone deaf, 9% slightly tone deaf, and then 84% non-tone deaf. So in short, I think it's unlikely that you're going to have a totally tone deaf person coming in through your door, you know, because out of that small percentage, whether that's 4 or 7%, not that many of those people are going to actually come and have singing lessons, right? Because they're somewhere along the line, they've been told you can't sing and don't sing, and they've been put off, and so mentally they're not right in the mindset to go and have singing lessons. But occasionally, and it's definitely happened to me, someone will come in with that very intention of saying, look, I've been told that I was tone deaf and that I couldn't sing in tune, but am I really? And is there something I can do about it? And that was a really interesting experience for me the very first time it happened, because I had this woman who was Irish, right? And I had that really stereotypical concept about, you know, if you're Irish, you can sing. All the Irish can sing, right? And she couldn't pitch for the love of her, not when she first started. And it wasn't even close. It was just so way out. It wasn't even kind of related, which is something I'm going to talk about in a moment. And it took me a term, but I managed to get her to sing a simple folk melody, pentatonic melody, 5 notes at the end of the term. But it was a lot of hard work for her, and she didn't come back, I think, because she just must have thought this is going to take many years, and it probably would take her many years to get to a place where she was totally competent. So is there a better way of explaining it? Now, I use the term that somebody is pitch disorientated. I just made that up. Because I thought most of the people that come in, it's not like they can't hear the difference between one note and another. They can often tell you, oh, yeah, that one's higher or that one's lower, or, yeah, I'm not singing the right note. But they don't know how to recreate it in their voice, and they don't quite know where to put it and how to sequence it, etc. So I just thought, oh, well, they're not really tone deaf, they're just disorientated. And then I came up with this phrase, this term, pitch disorientated, and feel free to use it, because I think it's really quite appropriate to most of the people that we're dealing with. So some other reasons that people might have pitch problems is like they've had no musical exposure. So maybe they didn't have any chance to sing at school or learn an instrument or listen to much music. So one of the problems that this woman I was working with, she was Irish, and her mum said it was sinful to sing. So they weren't allowed to actually sing. And there wasn't any music in the house either. So how could she really orientate herself to pitch, because it just wasn't around her? And that seems like a really incredible thing to most of us, but that is some people's life. So the other thing is like not having any kind of musical structural education. So like, I don't know about you guys, but when I was at school, my first instrument was actually the recorder, and we had a little book, and I've still got it, you know, that had all the notes on it, and we learned about notes going up, notes coming down, and then we learned the note names, and then we learned how to play them on the recorder, and I loved it. So that started me off on this very structural education for music. The other thing which you get a lot is this negative emotional belief, and there's some sort of anxiety or fear associated with singing or singing in public or making any kind of non-speaking sound. And this is usually because that person has had a very bad experience, whether it's a parent, a teacher or children at school have made fun or told them to shut up or said that they're terrible. And then, of course, a belief starts to kick in, and they carry that, like we do a lot of our beliefs that we form from when we're young into adulthood. Now, the other reason, which we just talked about a little bit earlier, is poor vocal technique. And This might be actually they were taught incorrectly or they've picked up bad habits, and so we're getting TA dominance as you go through the transition, which will cause the sound to go flat. So other things that might impact a singer's voice. So this might be if someone's just going slightly flat or slightly sharp. It could be related to their larynx, excessive vocal fold closure. It could be some structural changes that are happening at the vocal fold level, whether that's swelling due to overuse or injury, or hormonal changes like you were saying earlier. Excessive airflow will probably make you sharp. Excessive subglottic pressure might make you flat, could make you sharp as well if there's lots of air coming out. Lack of a vocal warm-up might have an impact. Lack of confidence, so you're not really supporting the vocal folds to create accurate pitch. Overconfidence or excitement. I've worked with singers who were so excited when they got on stage, they just oversang and then they went out of tune. And then the opposite is also true, where they're not focusing, they're not really focused in the right place, and so they're not listening carefully, they're distracted. And of course, general fatigue is another reason why quite often we get flat in pitch. So these are things that obviously as a singing teacher you're going to be able to correct through technique and health advice, etc. So here are some sort of tips to helping people work on pitch. Just like we talk about in BAST in the course, it's really important to set goals. Because if we start down this journey and you know that this is going to take several months, if not maybe a year or so, to get really, strong, but the singer thinks that they're going to learn about it in a few weeks, there's going to be this disparity and then they might lose motivation. So if you've set the goals together and you as the expert can say, look, it'll be very realistic for you to be able to produce a pitch 80% of the time within a couple of months, or whatever it is that you think. And it might, there's no science to it. It's generally going to be experience, and it'll be also how much work they're going to do as well that will impact how quickly they get to it. Because if they're not doing the work at home and they're only doing that half hour or hour with you, they're not going to progress very fast. So part of the goal setting could be about, practice as well. Taking it slow. So just one note at a time to begin with. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. I also suggest, if you've got someone who's really pitch disorientated and finds it very difficult to pitch off an instrument, that you actually just start around their speaking range so that you're not having to deal with the transition. And then also use your visual, auditory, kinesthetic approaches. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we look at apps. So you're going to help them tune in to what they're hearing, either inside themselves or externally, how it feels, and then how it looks. And it might be, that they can see themselves in the mirror, or maybe it is that you've got some sort of graph there that shows them where they are pitch-wise. So we want to also make sure that we're encouraging and giving appropriate praise and taking a much more growth mindset approach, especially when you're working with someone who's got quite a lot of emotional issues around singing. We want to go, okay, well, maybe your pitching is not accurate, but that doesn't mean that you can't improve with time and practice and with working with me, because I'm going to give you strategies, that will help you develop that skill. And if you take the approach that actually all we're doing is increasing the muscle memory, and we're also helping the brain to discern what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it, and what the difference is between one and another, and you allow some patience to come into it, then you will achieve your goals. We want to be giving constructive and practical feedback. It's really not that useful just to say, oh, you're great, you did really, perfectly, or, well done for trying. It's actually yes, you did well. We need to make sure that next time you're singing a little bit higher, so because you're a bit flat, or maybe we want to start the note being on pitch right from the beginning rather than just finding it along the way. So we're constantly being constructive. And also, if you're seeing that they're working well and that they're doing the homework, obviously we want to praise that as well. So another thing we want to do is getting feedback from the student, and I like using that 1 to 5 scoring method that we use in the course, where it's not about judging whether you're good or bad, but right, how did we progress? So how accurate was it? Was it sharp? Was it flat? Was the pitch too low, too high? So it might be very simple, that you go in too high, too low. And was that, an improvement on the last one, or is there more work to be done? Hi, Deanna. Feel free to join via the hi. Pop your video on if you want. Nice to see you.
Okay.
The other thing is that we have to make sure we're giving them some practice audios to take home with them, because they're not going to be able to manage this all by themselves. So it might be that you create some specific audio files on that particular work that day, or you might do audio files that are much more focused on one pitch or interval pitches or little melodies. So you give them, I usually sort of give them in little files so it doesn't get too overwhelming. Making it fun, and then also using other tools besides you. So we'll look at some other tools that are available. Right, so let's get into some very specific exercises. And I know that you guys, because you're all experienced teachers, will probably have your own as well. And I want to hear about them. But if I just tell you the ones that I've got, and then we can have a discussion about what you use and share amongst each other, because that would be really cool. So I always like to break things down to its most simplest thing. So the first thing is that we're not just working on the ability to reproduce the pitch, but we need to also improve their ear, so their oral training. Because the brain, creating pitch is a very complicated thing. If anyone's looked into the sort of neurology of it and the neuroscience behind how we sing and create pitch. So where we hear and perceive pitch is very different to where we produce it. So it's different parts of the brain. And then where we hear and perceive rhythm is different to pitch, and and then we've got the lyrics, because we've got to remember the words. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening in the brain when we're singing that it's a miracle that we can sing in the first place. So what I want to do is divide it into ear training and perception, and reproduction, I should say. So the first thing is really just playing or singing a note. Now, you may have noticed that sometimes if you have a student who's having difficulty on the piano, as soon as you sing it, they're able to sing it back. So use your own voice as well, and then toggle between the two so they start getting used to pitching off the piano as well as pitching off your voice. You may even actually use another instrument, just so they start getting used to hearing other instruments creating the same pitch. So sing or play 2 notes on a piano of anything up to an octave. And I would start somewhere around that shouldn't say major fifth. What am I saying there? Probably a perfect fifth is what I meant there. So perfect fifth or perfect eighth, and gradually decrease the intervallic distance, because hearing the distance between 2 intervals is much easier when there's a big distance than when there's a little distance. So I might go, so here's my first note. Is that higher or lower? Is that second note higher or lower than that first one? So we're not worrying about that it's an octave distance or how, what note it is. It's just, is it higher or lower? Is that higher or lower? And I literally start like that. So they start getting used to the idea that a pitch can be described as being higher or lower, because that might be a really foreign concept to someone who's never done any kind of music at all. And then we want to make sure that the distance gets smaller, and then we could ask the student to actually identify when you're sliding around. So this you might do, well, you could do it on the piano. I don't know if you can hear that. Let me make that louder. Am I going up or down? So they're not just getting used to the idea of one interval, distance, but also a sliding interval distance. And you can also do that on your voice. And of course, we really want eventually for them to be able to do it as well. So try little snippets of melody and change the key and ask if the second melody is higher or lower than the first. So that's your first melody. Is that second one lower or higher than the first one? So now they're starting to really tune in tonally to, there is a difference between those two. We don't know what they are. We don't know anything about keys or anything, but we're starting to hear that one sounds lower or deeper and the other one sounds higher. And you don't have to do complicated melodies. Just get melody of something like a favourite song or, a song that's really easy to do. So when we're getting them to sing, we can get them to sing this stuff. Ian Davidson did a study on amusia, and he actually discovered that when he got the singers to use straws, they were more accurate. So I can't remember why. I must get him to explain why. Has anyone talked to him about it? Anyone know? So you might go, okay, so play that first note and see if they can make the sound through the straw. Or it could be a hum, or a ba, or a mum. And then glides obviously need to be on the open vowel sounds when they do that. And then you can also, at some point, if you want to, use solfege if you start to build up, now we're going to start building. So I might go from those single notes with single intervals into actually something more sequential to build into a major scale. Because what we're trying to do ultimately is get them to the place where they'll be able to sing a scale so that we can do vocal technique with them. And this has been, when people they struggle because they want to do all this vocal technique, but the person can't pitch the scales at all. So we're teaching them about sequence. And then once we've done the major scale, so you may have to do that from G to G for a girl or C to C for a guy so that they're in their lower part of their registers and not having to deal with transitions. Then we can say, okay, let's give them a name, or whether it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, if you work in the solfege rhythm system, or you might use numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now they're starting to see, there's a sequence and there's some sort of pattern to this as well. And of course, the major scale is the fundamental for many of our scales and arpeggios and things like that we do. So the glide one is quite useful. So you can either use a straw, so you can get them started on a note of their own, so or maybe on a specific note. So you might say, here's your starting note. Now, and now slide up. Don't even worry where they go. It doesn't have to be ordered. It's just this concept of now going up, now go down. So now their body and their ears and their brain are starting to get used to, pitch can be created randomly or specifically, and there can be a pattern and there's a distance. By the way, if you've got any questions, just put your hand up or pop into the conversation. So we can play single notes on the piano and ask the student to reproduce the note. And if it's not accurate, I like to get the student to to let me know whether they think it's higher or lower. And of course, you can make a game out of this. You can have, I don't know, little jelly beans or something, you know, as a prize for getting them correct. And each week, you know, they're hoping to build up their little jelly bean collection, or maybe if you don't want to give them sweets, then stars or whatever it is. And then even if they reproduce the wrong pitch, they're still gaining some information out of that. So say you play and they go, la, then you go, is that higher or lower than what I played? La, you know, and then let them see if they can find that more accurate one. La, la. Then they go, oh yeah, it was a bit higher. Dodgy note. Makes me feel quite... yeah, so then getting the student to slide up and down to the notes that start with smaller intervals and widen. So that semitone, E, 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 E. As you can see, it's a challenge. E, E. So you can play both the notes, so they're getting that information. E. And they're starting to realise, you know, that they can slide up, and when they hit the note, they can hear that it's actually the same as what you're playing. That's quite a fun one. And you can also do it, obviously, coming down as well. Now, if this is nigh impossible, and trust me, I've experienced it, I don't know if you have, where I've done everything possible to try and get the note, the student to recreate the note. They just can't, even after a couple of lessons. I realised that actually if I get them to sing a note, just any note, and then I find it on the piano, and then I get them to, I play that note again, and then they have to repeat it. And I might do that 5 times or something, because remember, repetition is really important. So say they sang the note was E, so I find it on here, and then they stop and I say, now sing that again. E, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. But then they might sing another note, then I'll find that on the keyboard, and then I'll go, okay, stop, and now repeat that note, and just see if they can get back to where, because they're the one that produced the note, so hopefully they'll be able to come back to it again. Then when they've done that, if they're getting more accurate, which you know, hopefully they will after a couple of weeks, once they've hit the note the second time, so say they've found their own note, you found it on the piano, then they've repeated it, E, then you play a note above, E, and see if they can find that semitone or that tone above. Was that a half step or a whole step above? And then also try going down. This stuff could take up a whole half hour of your lesson, right? We're not going fast with this, but it's where we have to be if we want to really help train the brain. So the other thing that I like to do, and this is where we use the kinesthetic part of this process of learning, is to get the student to sit at the piano. Get them to play. So I tell them, okay, so play between here and here. So I give them, you know, on the keyboard, I tell them which they can play any note between one note and another. And then I get them to just sit down, play a note, and then reproduce it. E, and now we're helping them to be able to practice at home. And anybody who needs to work on their pitching in this way has to get some sort of keyboard. You know, even just some little dinky Casio, or maybe even an app. I mean, it's much better probably to have something, you know, tangible. But they don't need to spend a lot of money. They can just, you know, spend £25 or something like that, or £12. So I'm sure on Amazon or eBay there'll be some little pianos available that, or keyboards notes that are very cheap. So when they're sitting at home and playing the notes, when the student's done that, I notice that then there's accuracy speeds up incrementally. Okay, and then the other thing is, start to say, so when we go in this direction towards the right, the notes are higher, and when we go into the left-hand side, the notes are lower. So I want you now to play a note, sing it, E, and now find a higher note to sing, E. So it doesn't matter what the note is, and then get them to literally walk up until they find the note that they've sung the second time. So this is really interesting, and it's happened to me, I think, once, where I had this student and I couldn't understand. So I'd play this and I'd hear la. They'd always sing like one of the what was, I would call the harmony notes. And I realised that it was on a piano. They somehow were tuning into the harmonics because it was consistent. It might have actually been the fifth. And it took me a while to figure out what they were doing. And once I did, I went, oh, okay, they're singing one of the harmonics. They're not actually singing the fundamental. And so it took a little while, but once I was able to get her to listen into the fundamental note and say, that's the note you listen to and that's the one you need to recreate, she was much better. That was a weird one. The brain, it's such a weird thing. And of course, sometimes they'll sing an octave away as well, and that might be more to do with technique. Okay, we want to gradually increase our intervals. We want to add another note, and we want to get the student to either sing each note one by one after you play it, or you play it once and then, so in the beginning, it might be that you do a little pattern of, and they go la, la, so they go la, 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 and then try and do it together, la, 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 and then you will play it, and then you ask them to sing it, la, 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 because now we're working on musical memory. And of course, singing a song and being able to remember that melody is all basically tied into our musical memory. So we're helping to improve that as they're progressing. So we want to increase more notes. We want to add in triads, 3-note scales, 5-note scales. That should say octave arpeggios, major scale, chromatic, long scale. Of course, you might need to break these down. So the long scale, even sometimes with people who are not really pitch disorientated, what I do is I'll say, let's do the first 3 notes. And now let's do the first 4. And now let's do the first 6. Before I even start doing that descending one. And then I might just start with that. And then the next thing that's difficult for them is this turnaround on the way down because it's a semitone. Oh, it's a tone. So it's a tone. And of course, for singers or people who are musical and are used to the major scale, they're used to the turnaround at the top being a semitone. I don't know if that's something that you've ever encountered. So if they're thinking about, oh, I'm descending now, and they're thinking about like, it's just a little movement, and that's one of the reasons sometimes they'll get that note wrong. So it might be, and then, and literally just add on each note one at a time and just slowly build that up. Now, this is probably going to be quite, for someone who's pitch disorientated, this is going to be quite some months down the track. Okay, so now we want to really challenge them again even further, and this is fun, And that is, they sing a note and then you sing a harmony note, and they've got to actually maintain their note against your harmony note. So it might be just one note at a time, and you might sing a third up, or, you know, fifth down, or sixth, or whatever it is, you know, wherever you like to be. And you might play the root note in your on the piano. So like maybe play the root and then their note, or they do the root and then you play the chord, you know, whatever. If you feel like there needs to be some support there, and that's fine, play it on the piano. Otherwise, just do something like they sing, and then you're going to sing. So they're doing la, and at the same time you're doing la, and see if they can hold on to it. And then graduate to a short melody, and then build a whole line and maybe a whole chorus, you know, of a favourite song. So some useful pitch training tools. I don't know if anyone uses anything, but these are a couple that I have found quite useful. Oh, I was going to show you how this one works. So there's the InsTuner app. There's Sing True. There's Sing and See, which is this one down here in the bottom, you know, with the big graph. And when I had people who were having pitch issues that were, say, they just had a bit of a discrepancy, when they sang using the Sing and See, they could see their pitch was flat, and they seemed to correct themselves as soon as they realised, oh, I need to sing on that line, that's the middle of the pitch. Then they actually corrected themselves. It was really interesting. So that's where the visual aspect of the learning strategies come in. And then there's sites like musical-u.com where they have little courses and things like that. So has anyone used any of these apps? No? Okay. So I'm just going to show you how that works. And while we do that, be nice if everyone came on, Deanna, and talk to me while I set up so I can show you how the app works. And Coleno, is your microphone working? Unmute. Let's unmute you guys. There we go. So yeah, Deanna, hello, nice to meet you.
Hello.
So I know you missed the beginning, but you'll be able to catch up on the video when I load it up into the membership. So have you had issues with people who cannot sing in tune?
It's usually during a song.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to help them with that note. So either I will print out the sheet music and find it, and I'll keep playing it over and over until they get it. Mm-hmm. I also like to start a song. Like if they're learning a new song, I like to play the scale, mm-hmm, so they can learn the notes that's in the song.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
That has helped.
So have you ever been in a situation where you've had somebody who just can't pitch off your piano or voice?
I have, and it takes a lot of time. Yeah. I do the glides and like that during the warm-ups to help them, and then I try to pluck the notes out, mm-hmm, in the song, mm-hmm, if they can't hear it.
Yeah. So of any of the exercises that I've explained here, do you think any of them might be useful for you?
Yes, I like how you said that you can play a note or have them sing a note and then harmonize over it. Mm-hmm. A lot of my students are young and they don't understand harmony quite yet. Mm-hmm. So it throws them off when I'm like trying to sing something higher than them. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good idea. And then having them find it on the piano. I haven't tried that yet. Yeah. Like having them actually sit down and play the note. I think that would help a lot.
Now look, I want to share my app with the screen, but I have to swap my internet.
I have to sing and see, but I haven't really used it quite yet because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I can go onto their site and talk about it. So can you guys just bear with me while I turn on my Wi-Fi?
Okay.
I may have to log back in. It may log me out, but if you guys just stay there, once I log back in, then you'll be able to see me again. So bear with me a sec. Right. We all seem to be still here, right? Okay. That was bizarre. It never works the way that you think it's going to. Okay, technology. Right, what about you, Colina? What do you do?
Oh, hey Lynn, you're right. So yeah, I use some of those exercises that you were talking about playing two notes and asking them if one is higher in pitch than the other, or if it's lower in pitch. And then I also use a straw as well to help them with the notes. And then sometimes I'll play melodies, or I might start off with one or two notes and play the notes and then get them to sing that back, and then increase the amount of notes and make it like into a little, a little melody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So anything particularly that you thought might be useful to try out that I talked about just now?
Yeah, I actually do like the one about get you actually singing the harmony whilst you get them to hold the melody.
Yep.
I think that's a really good one, yeah.
Bad.
So I'm going to try that one.
Good. Yeah. So, yeah, what about you, Marianne?
I've done a lot of the things that you mentioned. Haven't had them sit down at the piano and play it themselves, so that's a new way of learning. I will use the forebrain. I don't know if do you use that at all?
The which one?
The forebrain, the bone conduction apparatus.
Oh, I've heard about it. So do you have that with you?
No, it's over in my studio, of course. But it's really cool. It just fits over the ears and it goes right in front of the ears, and it has a little microphone. So as you speak or sing into that, you're hearing through your bone conduction. So it's like an additional way of hearing. And I find that it helps them tremendously. Problem is, it's about $250.
Right. I was going to say, where do you get it and how much is it? Yeah.
You can look it up online. It's FORBRAIN, forebrain. And I have maybe 3 students who actually purchased one because it helped them so much. Vanessa actually is a rep for it. Well, not really a rep, but you can get it through her website too. You can get it on your own. But yeah, I found that has helped a lot of them. But I don't know whether then they get so used to it that they can't sing without it.
Yeah.
But what I found mostly is that it just makes them listen to themselves. It forces them to. So that's my tip.
And that's another thing you could do actually, is you could get them to block their ear so they can hear themselves internally a little bit better, which is obviously something we do in the studio. But it just gets them to tune into internally to what they're hearing. So I'm just going to share. Oh no, is my screen sharing?
Yes.
Can you see the app? No, you can't. I don't think you can see the app. So let me go back to the app. Right, let's just move that there. So this is the app ins tuner. So if someone's singing a note, so it's really sensitive, where most of the time we would go, oh, that's in tune, it's picking up when it's not. But it actually does make you really want to be much more accurate. So you could also, I think you can look at it on the dial as well. Try it out. It's really hard to keep it absolutely in the middle of because it's so sensitive. But you can tell that if I do, I'm sort of halfway in between there, aren't I? Now I'm on another note. So that's quite a useful app, and I think it's free.
It is.
Yeah. So there's that one, and I was going to also, I used to have Sing and See on my desktop, but it disappeared when I did a upgrade, and then I never got round to sort of putting it back on again. And it's on an old laptop. But I'll just take you to the website. Has everybody heard about Sing and See? Marianne, do you know about it? Marianne?
Yes, I've heard about it, but it's not an app. It's something that you have to buy from their website.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit of software that you need to put on to your desktop, or well, it's generally better to put on your laptop. So when it opens, I think they've got a demonstration. So they've got a version for teachers, so you can actually also do spectrograph. Oh no, we don't want to we want to see it at work. They used to have a little video of someone showing it. Anyway, so when someone's singing, they'll see themselves singing, and then they'll see what note they're singing and how accurate it is. And then you could look at the their harmonic strength on the spectrograph as well. But I was sure that there was things have changed a little bit. Sing and See in action. Oh, maybe it's this one. Nope. They seem to have taken the video off, which is a real shame. Range BAST research, and they do quite a lot of people use it in their research as well. And it's like in BAST, there is a discount code in the membership. Let's see if it's there. They used to have a video where you could see how it worked, how to use. No. Anyway, so you can see it's zoomed in here, and so this is A, and that yellow line is where you're aiming to keep your pitch. And what I've noticed is that if somebody's slightly under, when they see where they are, they just they can actually pitch up, and that might be something quite useful, Deanna, for your students. A visual thing, it might be that just once they see it visually, they're more likely to be able to pitch accurately. So what else do people use? Let's have a look at those, what did you say they're called?
Forebrain.
Forebrain. Right.
I was going to suggest you might see if you can become like a rep or something, and then maybe you could put a discount on the BAST website.
Oh, so it's quite sophisticated, isn't it?
No, it's really not. I mean, you just pull it out of the box.
This is a sound wave. Sound is all around us. It can take many forms. It reaches us through air via the ear's auditory canal, but also through bone. Yes, sound is also transmitted through the bones of the skull. The sound of your own voice, for example, is primarily propagated by bone. When you talk while covering your ears, you hear yourself all the better as you're blocking out the surrounding sounds that could pollute the sound of your voice. In fact, the auditory system works like a funnel that receives the air and bone vibration and converts it into an electrical message. This message is then transmitted to the brain. Then the brain identifies the voice among all the surrounding sounds, breaks up speech by identifying the onsets of words, the consonants, the vowels, and then breaks up the words, analyzes the meaning of these words, and, finally, enables you to emit a sound in response. This is called audio-vocal loop. But many situations such as stress, fatigue, and strong emotions can disrupt this loop and prevent you from listening well. Today, there's a simple and effortless solution to retrain your brain and thereby enable you to communicate better. This solution is 4Brain. 4Brain is a bone conduction headphone equipped with a dynamic filter microphone. It is designed to let you work on your own voice, training it to concentrate on the most pertinent sounds. This lets you significantly improve your attention span, your concentration, your memory, your elocution, and your pronunciation. How? Simply by using 4Brain a few minutes every day. All you have to do is read a text out loud or speak to another person. In all cases, it is your own voice stimulating your brain. To learn more about 4Brain, visit the site www.4brain.com.
Oh, right. So it's more for speech then.
That's really what they developed it for.
Right.
It works well for kids with speech and learning disabilities and autistic and Asperger's. But I know it really helped me with my voice, staying in tune more. And I have two, one that I can use and one that I let my students use.
Yeah. Interesting. Always nice to hear about a new gadget. Okay, so has anyone got any questions or comments about helping singers sing in tune? Any other ideas or suggestions that you incorporate in your own teaching or that you're questioning about?
I have a question. For beginner students, what would be some good songs for them to sing that doesn't have a lot of jumps or anything? They can stay on pitch. I tried the cup song, but are there any other ones?
The cup song, isn't that quite difficult?
Yeah, it's pop.
Yeah.
Oh, I must sing pop music.
Yeah, so
or anything, it doesn't matter.
well, when I work with people who are struggling, I start with quite simple folky songs like that are around the pentatonic or around those more simple scales. So there's quite a lot of pentatonic scales out there, songs out there. You can just do a search for them. I don't use any specific songs. Is there any? Because I generally don't work with that sort of type of singer, but maybe Colina or Marianne, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I was just going to type it in. The One Note Samba by Antonio Carlos Jobim.
Yeah.
It does kind of stay pretty easy until you get to the refrain, or is it the verses, whatever, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
One
Note Samba.
Yeah.
Okay. By who?
It's a jazz piece.
Here, I'll type it in.
Oh, okay.
Jobim.
Carlos Jobim. There we go.
It might be worth just getting some more folk song type things.
Okay.
Rather than going for, some of the pop songs are very complicated.
Oh, I know. Sometimes they're picky.
I don't think I've got those books here with me. They're in my studio. But I have in my studio a couple of very sort of songs from the 60s and the 70s. Look at as well. They're not so complicated rhythmically or even melodically.
Okay.
So folk songs and songs from 60s pop.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, anything else, Elena?
No. Hey.
All right, so I've got here some sort of other references and resources that might be useful. The Montreal Battery for Evaluation of Amusia is sort of at the moment, one of the standard tests for amusia. So you'll find more information there. And then Musician's Brain's quite an interesting site there too. I've found some interesting books, which I didn't list there. but there's 3 books that have been very instrumental in helping me understand how the brain works around music. So this one here, this is Your Brain on Music by a guy called Daniel Levitin. And he's actually a record producer and then went into neuroscience, as you do. And so he was like really fascinated about, you know, the brain and music and what makes a musician and what is it, you know, that music is consisting of and how's it discerned in the head and, you know, what makes a musician and, you know, stuff like that. So that's been quite interesting. And then The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge. I think that's how you say his name. That's Doidge. He's an MD, and he basically talks about about the plasticity of the brain. And it was reading these books that made me realise that actually the answer to can you teach anyone to sing is yes. You know, if you just want to keep it short. Of course, it gets a little complicated in the sense that it may take some people a bit longer, and it might depend on their motivation and whether they're you know, they're able to put the time aside and all that sort of thing. But if someone is really motivated and they're willing to put the work in, you can teach someone who thinks that they can't sing to sing. Will they be Pavarotti or Aretha Franklin? Probably not. Very unlikely. But they could still go and really enjoy the process of singing and contribute in a choir and enjoy, you know, the activity. And a big part of the reason why I changed my mindset on that is from reading the books like this, because I realised the brain is very clever. And even though maybe some of it has been injured or removed or is missing right from birth, it can actually make up for the deficit. So there are other parts of the brain that can take over the more conventional sort of things of like speaking and writing and walking and talking are generally done in certain places in the brain. And when I learnt about neuroscience when I was nursing, we were told that it's fixed, you know, that if someone injures the speech part of their voice, of their brain, they're never going to get their speech back. If they injure the walking part, they're never going to get their ability to walk back again. But now we realise actually that's not true, and with the right kind of understanding of how the brain neural pathways work and how to create new ones, we can actually get someone who has very large deficits from a stroke or brain injury to actually make those deficits up. It might take years, like it might take up to, you know, 7 or 8 years, but it is possible. And then the other book which I love is the Oliver Sacks Musicophilia. And so Oliver Sacks is a very famous, or was, because he's unfortunately passed away now, famous neurologist. Yeah, he's a professor of clinical neurology. So he comes from a medical background and was totally fascinated by the brain. And did anyone ever read or hear about the book about the man who mistook his wife for a hat? Or there was a Robin Williams movie, I think it was called Awakenings or something like that. That's actually based on a story that Oliver Sacks told, and about his story as a young intern and resident in neurology. And so this particular book is all about case history stories of people who've had some sort of brain issue, neurological issue, that has some kind of correlation to music, whether it's because they were a musician and then their brain got damaged and it impacted on their musicianship, or whether it was somebody who got literally hit by lightning and then became obsessed with playing Debussy on the piano at 40 and went off and learnt how to play the piano and ended up playing this very complicated music, to people who were born with half a brain and nobody knew, and all sorts of other different stories, and about musical savants as well. So, and it's really beautifully written. It's very easy to read. It's not at all, difficult from a medical point of view. So those are very interesting books to read to help you understand how the brain processes things like music, and how maybe we're underestimating what our brain's capable of doing. So when you're working with a student who seems to not be progressing, there's a couple of options. You could either change the way that you work with them. You could see if maybe if they get more engaged in their own learning, whether that motivates them, or it might be that you need to find someone else to help you find a way in. But if you keep going, you may make a huge difference to somebody's life in helping them enjoy music when they came, especially into adulthood, thinking that they could never sing. And I think that's a big part of our role, really, is to bring joy of singing to everybody in some way, whether it's through technique or improving musicality or rhythm, or giving them performance opportunities, or learning how to songwrite, or whatever it is that we can do. All right, well, I'm going to let you go. Thanks very much for hanging out with me for the last hour and a bit.
Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Yes, you too. I hope it was helpful. And if you're interested in anything specifically, please let me know. Drop it in the membership, Facebook membership, make suggestions of things that you might want to learn about.
Okay.
Lynn.
Great.
See you later.
Bye.